Hello and welcome to Bluestocking Stories, Mary Baldwin University's podcast about the people and stories that make our community. I'm glad to have you listening as I speak with two esteemed guests. Brooke Buffington is an expert in personal and career development who joined Mary Baldwin in 2025 as the Vice President of Career and Professional Development. In that role, she leads the McCree Center in connecting students with internship and full time opportunities and preparing the MBU student body for success after graduation. Dr. Amy Diduch has served the MBU community for years as a professor of economics and college dean. Now she is the Dean of Institutional Effectiveness and an important part of the team shaping Mary Baldwin education to meet the needs of current and future students. Thank you for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
We're excited.
So, first, I want to start maybe by establishing the circumstances that students are facing that has sort of prompted the work that you're both focused on. So, I think there's some familiar problems, some really unfamiliar, almost alien problems that students are facing. Who wants to take a shot at explaining that? What are students looking at?
I'm happy to jump in on the career front, the changes that we're seeing for students that they're graduating into, whereas other students prior to this current iteration of the world that we're living in didn't graduate into. The economic climate is a bit uncertain, right? So our graduating students have to be aware that it isn't a kind of from an economic standpoint, the side is not on the labor right now. So they're having to position themselves really strategically for this market, really thoughtfully, and they have to take ownership over where they want to go because the economic environment is not one where people are wildly hiring. There is hiring going on. It's decent, but it's not in the favor of the labor market right now. The people that are looking for opportunities, they've called it neutral is the word that's being used. People aren't leaving their jobs. They're not necessarily being fired, but everything's in neutral. So if you think about it from a car, it's not necessarily in drive right now. People seem to be on hold when it comes to hiring. And then you've got AI on top of that. And so everybody's trying to predict where AI is going to affect the labor market, how it's going to impact the entry-level market is what we're always looking at in the career space because the majority of students that we're working with are in or near the entry-level market. And so we're always looking at that particular area, but everybody's trying to make that prediction of where AI is going to impact work and which jobs or maybe are kind of out of market due to AI and which jobs are going to be partnered with AI and need to change. What are you seeing, Amy?
I think there are a couple of things you've said that I would build off of. I want to start with the AI part and then work backwards, I think, towards what a liberal arts foundational set of courses can do for a student. I think that AI is going to end up favoring people who can really lean into a lot of the traditional skills that are strongly built in a liberal arts education. Yes. Things like the ability to collaborate, the ability to lead a team, the ability to communicate effectively, particularly, orally, in working with people. AI might be able to replicate certain kinds of professional writing skills, but that it does not. It does not obviate the need to be able to communicate outward to the people that you work with, and so I think that's really critical. We have made a claim for a very long time that a liberal arts education is really critical to the building of these kinds of skills, what are sometimes referenced as soft skills, or I like the term durable skills a lot better. They're the skills that you will take with you throughout life, no matter what type of job you have. And so in choosing to build our skills portfolio at Mary Baldwin, we've really chosen to lean into those skills. So that's communication and collaboration, it's leadership, it's creativity and problem solving, right? It's data fluency and it's inclusivity. These are things that you will take into any job that you go into in the future, and that are authentically built within a liberal arts education. The challenge we've had, we believe that we've always created these kinds of skills in our students, but we haven't done it in a way that is visible externally or even visible internally to our students. And that's a failing of ours. We believe in this, but we haven't proven that we do it. So the skills portfolio and the skills stacks at Mary Baldwin are an opportunity to create the skills development in a visible and authentic way so that students can articulate to employers and to graduate schools what they've learned, and so that our external audience can have a way of checking to see that we do what we actually say that we do.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what education looks like in 2026, an effective education. But I'm wondering if we can boil it down even more simply into two questions. What are students looking for, and what are employers looking for in 2026?
You want to start with that one, or you want
Oh gosh,
me
Keith,
to jump
give
in?
us a hard one. What are students looking for? I think that our research on students suggests that students are looking for they're looking for belonging and a sense of community. They are also looking for return on their investment in their education, right? They recognize that they are spending a large amount of money, many of them going into debt in order to get their college degree, and they want to make sure that it will pay off. Many of them recognize that in today's world, they are likely to need to get a master's degree eventually. And so they want to make sure that they've got the kind of pathway that either takes them on to that kind of graduate program or to a job that feels fulfilling to them. Or at Mary Baldwin, it's military service, or it's a service type of profession that is meaningful to a student, right? But all of those, belonging and well-being on the one hand, but a career trajectory that gives them a return on their investment in education, is the other. And so, figuring out how to do that as a small liberal arts institution is really important to us. And so, I think that in many ways, the time is ripe for small liberal arts institutions. We can create that sense of belonging in a very concrete way through our neighborhoods, through the kinds of engaged experiences that we have at a small university, and then through leaning into our career and work-based preparation programs and our skills, we're able to help students see the return on their investment they're going to get by coming to a place like Mary Baldwin.
Yeah, and I'll second that by kind of summarizing it. In my mind, they want to know that this is time and money well spent, right? It's time and money well spent that gives me a launching point, right? They're looking for that launching point, and this time helps them, especially at a liberal arts college. This time helps them to explore who they are, what their natural skills and abilities are, what their purpose, what drives them forward, right? And then find that launching point through that discovery. And so that's why I love working with a liberal arts school and with liberal arts students, because they really are encouraged to explore in the classroom while they're building those fundamental skills, which is what I like to call them. They are fundamental skills. And when you talk about what employers are looking for on the other side, is these skills, right? They're looking for these skills.
Is that different from how it's ever been?
Well, I mean, hiring is always shifting because there's new tools, just like our students are using new tools with AI, our employers are using new tools, and they're looking at ways to hire more effectively and efficiently. So when you ask what employers are looking for, they're looking to hire effectively and efficiently, right? It's an expensive process to hire. Mm-hmm. It is a less expensive process to retain. And so they'd like to hire well, and they want to hire students that are excited to go work for their organizations and have a purpose for why they're pursuing the opportunities that they're pursuing. So they have now focused on skills-based hiring. That's the new term that we're hearing a lot in our field, that we're seeing more and more employers that are focusing on skills-based hiring. Do you have these skills that I need you to be able to complete to do this job well? And so they're asking students to prove those skills as a part of the hiring process. And that's why the skills portfolio lines up so nicely for our students, because as Amy mentioned, they're learning these skills, right? They're learning them in the classroom. They're engaging in with their fellow peers in developing these skills, but oftentimes they're not threading the narrative. They haven't seen and acknowledged this development of skills because we haven't really shown it to them. We haven't made it clear and transparent. And so by building a skills portfolio, we're able to make it more transparent to the student what they're learning and developing so that they can better communicate it to those employers that are looking to hire based on skills. So it's a really nice alignment with what the industry and hiring market is asking of our students and what we're helping our students to better recognize and understand is a part of their education.
Can I follow up one thing? We've been talking about skills.
Yes.
And I think earlier in the conversation I kind of listed out what the skills that we're including in the skills portfolio and talked about them as durable or fundamental skills,
Yeah.
which is really true. I think that the general public often when they think about skills, they're thinking about what we would term technical skills. And I think a really great example of that is computer
Right.
programming, coding. And those technical skills are the ones that have always been very time dependent, right? You would learn a particular type of computer programming language, and then within, that language itself changes over time, but then the most predominant computer language changes into a different one. And then now we've entered the AI era where people are vibe coding with Claude rather than writing their own code from scratch, right? So that's a great example of a technical skill that whatever technical skill variant you learn in college is likely to change within the year or 2 or 3 after you complete college and may be completely 180 degree changed thanks to AI. So the kinds of skills that we are talking about, those fundamental foundational skills, are the ones that are going to be useful to you throughout your career, throughout your lifetime. And I don't want to say that anything is AI proof, right? But they are the kinds of skills that are absolutely necessary and that will allow you to succeed in an AI era.
It will allow you to partner, right, between team members that you're likely to work with in any role, job, even graduate school, and the AI tools that those team members and you are using, right? And to have the kind of the fundamental awareness, the emotional intelligence to be able to process between the two different platforms of human interaction, right, like we're having today, and digital interaction where you're working with AI. And so that's where, what Amy was mentioning, even with the technical skills, when I've worked in the past with computer science students, for example, what the employers want to know oftentimes is, have they learned a coding language? And maybe it's not, they would love it if it's their specific coding language, but if it isn't, they know how to learn a coding language, because likely, as you just mentioned, the language may shift, the platform they're working on may shift, the entire way that they're working in that digital infrastructure might shift, but they know how to learn it, because they're likely they're going to have to learn it again and again and again. And so that learning agility becomes the key fundamental skill. It's not necessarily that one specific technical wherewithal.
And the question I'm starting to have, though, because I'm hearing a lot about these, what we used to call soft skills, I guess, right? Being able to
really
collaborate,
understates them.
being able to collaborate, being agile as a partner, both in the workplace and in school. I'm starting to wonder if the classroom is the place where these skills are still learned. Is this still classroom skills, where should students be only doing apprenticeships, only doing, I'm getting us into the topic of work-based learning, which is
Well, I'm certain you're anticipating that we're going to say both.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? I do think that we are on the cusp of seeing a change in what happens in the classroom and how students demonstrate their learning in the classroom, right? I think that, given the ability of AI to write beautiful essays or solve simple problems for that might have been assigned to a student in a past, say, an economics course, right? Where, I would imagine, I believe, that we are going to see a shift towards more project-based learning, where a student accumulates both knowledge and skills throughout the semester and then demonstrates their learning through the presentation of a project at the end of a semester. And that happens already in many of our courses, but I think we will see that expand, right? And that kind of learning is both still authentic to a lot of different traditional disciplines,
Right.
but it also starts moving us towards something that feels a bit more preparatory to what a student might do after they complete college.
Yeah, and they do need both, right? Because work-based learning, I am a huge advocate for internships and any work-based learning, shadow opportunities, informational interviews, and other information gathering opportunities. But there's something about the classroom environment that allows students to fail, to mess up, to work through things under difficult circumstances with a educator, right, guiding them through that. Once you're on in a workplace environment, you hope they're still learning, but there maybe doesn't feel like as much permission to fail or permission, because you've got a supervisor who we hope is some form of educator, but not guaranteed that you're accountable to. In the classroom, you have peers and an educator that's helping to guide you through that learning, right? So that's where I think both of them really complement one another, and students who are able to get work-based learning experience while they're in a university setting can bring that back to the classroom and talk about where they struggled and I couldn't talk to my supervisor about it, and how could I better communicate the next time so that I know how to ask this question or to deal with this situation. The classrooms are a really great place to explore some of those challenges and difficulties where they can fail, they can ask difficult questions, they can not always know the answer to the challenges in front of them and work through it.
So I'm starting to get a vision for college that is classroom as sort of skills laboratory where you can experiment, try things out, and get a basis for yourself. And then a second half of your educational experience that is putting that into practice.
You know, and I should emphasize too that there is a certain amount of foundational knowledge, right? You're in, you know, within yourself, you need to have a certain set of concepts and theories and facts as a baseline to work with, right? And you know, I'll use my own discipline as an example. You know, anybody who wants to go on, you know, and work with any kind of policy making that requires some economic thinking, they need to have some foundational knowledge and experience of the basic models in economics, things like supply and demand, marginal analysis, what an elasticity is, what it means, and how you would interpret it, right? Because those are foundational things that you need to know in order to have good judgment in a policy-making setting, right? And so you need to develop that knowledge and those skills in the classroom first before you take it out and try to actually apply it in the real world.
And earlier you mentioned vibe coding, right? Sort of this, which is this idea that really anyone can build an app, build a program, and with the help of AI.
Yeah.
But what I'm also hearing is that we don't want a world of vibe economics, right? Where people are
really don't.
Yeah, where people are simply asking their LLM of choice. Can you remind me what is supply and demand again? Like what is?
Yes. Well, you know, in my data analysis course, my upper level data analysis course, I've been teaching them to use R, which is a programming based language, to analyze their data, right? Now, with the vast improvement in the ability of AI to write code in R, my students won't need the same technical level of knowledge of how to write in R, but if they don't understand foundationally how to ask good questions, statistical questions, and data analysis questions, they're not going to get good results even when it's AI aided. They've got to know how to ask the question, and they need to know what it means when they get an answer.
Now we've spoken about work-based learning.
Yes.
And we have the great luck of being in Virginia, which is actually well ahead of the curve nationally as far as work-based learning opportunities go. I'm basing a lot of this on the Strada Education Foundation's 2025 State Opportunity Index, which I'll link in the description of this for anyone who wants to look. They found that about 75%, it's about 3/4 of students in Virginia, get some work-based learning experience before graduation. Where are we at Mary Baldwin in comparison? And I have a follow-up.
Yeah. So, I mean, and one of the things that you didn't mention is the new launch of Internships Virginia, right? So that's
Yes.
a huge initiative by the state to make sure that all of our students that are in higher education in the state of Virginia complete an internship prior to graduation.
So that would be 100%.
That would be 100% is what the state is shooting for, and really supporting both in industry and higher education, and we're working together to help provide those opportunities. And I can give an example with a local partner who was just on campus yesterday for the career fair. So at Mary Baldwin, the good news is that a lot of our programs have some type of practicum or internship or work-based learning experience embedded in the program. So social work would be a good example of that, where a practicum experience is a part of that program. It's a part of the graduation requirement, and a student will complete that in a reflective way prior to graduation. Now, not all of our programs have that internship and work-based learning requirement embedded, and so what we're looking to do is support faculty and departments in determining how to make sure where it's not a required part of the student's time at the university, it is highly encouraged. And how do we make sure it's accessible, right? Because every student has different circumstances that they're coming into Mary Baldwin with. Some have transportation, some don't have transportation, some need to earn money over the summer, and so an unpaid internship is not going to be an option for them. And so really looking at how can we make both internships highly encouraged in those places where they're not mandated as a part of the curriculum and the graduation requirement, but also accessible to the students, so that those students don't feel like it's a burden to take on an internship or work-based learning experience, but an opportunity to develop their continued interest in a certain area or industry, and to continue to develop those skills that we've been talking about. So we actually have an internship grant that we're working with right now that we hope builds to another internship grant that's building the strategic plan just for this. Is how do we make internships more accessible? How do we make them more equitable? And how do we work with students in the disciplines where internships maybe haven't been as common in the past?
Something I've read elsewhere, I'm really glad to hear you address the question of equitability
Yeah.
in internships, which I think can
Yes.
be overlooked, right? Students have full-time jobs while
Absolutely.
they're in school. Students are student athletes. Time is very difficult. And I've read elsewhere that that a really small percentage of students actually understand the full spectrum of work-based learning opportunities available. And I guess I'm just wondering if maybe you could run through a few different ways, because we say internships, maybe a shorthand a lot of the time. Apprenticeships are similar, but there are lots of different ways that people can check that box of work-based learning.
Yeah. There's a lot of terminology in this space, right? There's co-ops, there's internships, there's apprenticeships, there's project-based internships, short-term internships. Really, what part of our job in the career services field is with work-based learning and overall opportunities is about exposure, right? Students come in typically with a kind of a narrow idea of the world of work. They know what their adults in their life did. They know what their friends adults did, whether they're parents or aunts and uncles, and they have a very narrow lens of what the world of work looks like. And part of our role as educators is to expand that lens and let them see the wide variety of opportunities that are in front of them. And we do that for internships as well, so or work-based learning as well. So that can look like an internship, which for a lot of students feels like a summer opportunity where I'm working 40 hours a week for 10 weeks, but it doesn't have to. Right? It could be a part-time opportunity while you're here in Stanton, where you're walking right down the street 2 blocks away to one of our small businesses and making an impact. We had an employer on campus yesterday. He has 4 interns. They're all right off campus. They walk to their internship, and they're making a huge difference in the small business kind of the small business world in Stanton, and expanding kind of the partnership between Mary Baldwin and our business partners right here in Stanton. So what we want to do is expose students to other internship opportunities. There are virtual and hybrid internship opportunities for students that maybe need to complete a part-time job while pursuing an internship. We have a first-year student that I was just working with last week who needs it to be his internship to be entirely virtual and needs it to be part-time. Very interested in the environment and sustainability. We reached out to a local nonprofit. They have some projects that need to get done. They're substantial projects. It's really good work for the student, and he's going to work with them on those projects, right? So it doesn't have to be I go into the office every day 8 to 5 anymore. There's a lot of ways that a student can complete a work-based learning experience that'll help them to develop more knowledge of an industry or field and develop their skills as well.
This whole conversation and hearing you describe the value that students are getting out of these
Yeah.
internships, it's making me reflect on the way that uh, I feel like in the past, internships maybe felt more like a line item on a resume, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, I did my internship, I'm ready to work now. Uh, but that sort of previously overlooked section of a resume is becoming one of the more important sections
Yeah.
of a resume,
Yeah.
right? And I think at the same time, another common section on a resume that's previously overlooked, now more important, is that skills section, right?
Absolutely.
Um, and I want to talk a little bit more about skill stacks to that end, because that is the way outside of work-based learning that Mary Baldwin is looking to address the question of how does a person feel equipped for the workforce. So skill stacks, I know you've run through earlier quickly what the actual categories of skills are that we're looking at, and just give us the overview.
Well, this may be more than you want to hear right now, but it's actually there's a two-part overview to this now. So feel free to edit
Sure thing.
as necessary. So in conversation with faculty, what we realized is that the faculty were really desirous of a way to show both to the students and externally how skills are developed within a major or a program. Our accredited programs already do this. They're required to do this. So if you are in the social work program, which is accredited, the social work program must show for every single course that you take in that program what's the knowledge, what are the skills that are being developed in that course, and how does that across the life of the program create students who are ready to be social workers, right? And so our faculty will be voting on in the next month a plan that will ask all of our undergraduate programs to do the same thing, to be able to show course by course what knowledge and skills will be developed in a particular major, right? So that's going to be part one. Now that is then information that a student and their advisor will have, right? So if you are a biology major, you are going to be very heavily focused on problem solving, probably a lot on collaboration, since that takes place in a laboratory setting. You're going to be pretty well focused on data fluency in a biology major, right? But the biology major itself might not develop, let's say, leadership skills as well, right? And so if you're a biology major, but you see yourself, your career goals as being something that would be aided by strengthening your leadership skills, then you'll be able to look at your major and say, I'm going to do well in these, but I think I'm going to be lacking in a skill that is important to my career goals. The skill stacks are then a way to identify a pathway for developing these skills. So if I want to focus on developing my leadership skills, I will pursue a leadership skills stack, and that will be a set of 4 courses and or experiences. So for example, serving as a leader in our student government association could be a part of a leadership skills stack, but so can taking courses that really explore what it is to be a good leader and what traits and habits should you develop in order to do that. Right. Data fluency is a great example of something that would be useful to people in a lot of different fields, because data fluency, it's not just about being a statistician, right? It's about how do you use and communicate with data? How do you both create visualizations and interpret them? How do you understand data in a way that helps either run your business or pursue any other pathway that you want to, right? And so adding on a data fluency skills stack to any major, whether it's a history major or a social work major, is a way to ensure that you have those really critical data oriented skills.
But just so to be sure that I'm understanding, a mathematics major might not need.
So a math major probably is building the data fluency skills very effectively, but a math major and a math major is clearly going to excel at problem solving. And quite frankly, a math major is also working on creativity skills. There's a significant amount of creativity that is necessary to work your way through certain kinds of more advanced mathematical problems, right? But a math major might need some additional help with communication, right? Being able to communicate effectively about your findings in the mathematical world would be really important. And they might need a little bit of extra assistance doing that, or they might choose inclusivity, in ways of making sure that they communicate and work with people from all different kinds of backgrounds so that they're not solely focused on the language of math, they're also focused on language that helps them talk and work with people from other viewpoints in life. So the idea is whatever it is that you are doing within your own particular major, you might want to supplement by choosing a skills stack that is complementary to your major, or that hits a particular career goal. Again, maybe your career goal is one in which problem solving is a significant focus. Your major might have a good, solid problem solving foundation. Maybe you want extra practice in that because that's going to prepare you for graduate school or prepare you for a particularly high-powered or competitive career. So you, as a student, are going to need to work with your advisor, with others, other faculty in your major, and with the McCree Center to identify what are your goals and what are the skills that are most relevant to achieving those goals. And then which of these skill stacks might you choose to fulfill in order to help you get there?
And I can go back to what we talked about at the very beginning of the conversation, which is what are college students looking for?
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned time and money well spent with a launching, towards an opportunity in the future. And that's where I think this trifecta of a liberal arts education with an intentional discipline or major that the student's excited about, really wants to dive into, develop their learning agility in, and then also with these complementary skills development, either inside the major or outside of the major, gives them an intentional kind of pathway to time and money well spent, right? They have a direction and a pathway to say, I'm putting these three things together with the intent to graduate into. And you had talked about workforce, but a lot of our students go into graduate school as well. And so it really is about what that student finds as their purpose, their next step post-graduation, and us working together inside the classroom and outside the classroom through work-based experience and skills stack and the liberal arts model to help that student kind of, one, develop that vision and then see what they need to build to go after it.
And so I think that's as good of a place as any to wrap it up. Thank you both for joining me here today. It's been really enlightening for me, somebody who graduated even just, I don't think that long ago, and there's a lot of new stuff that I'm trying to wrap my head around. So this was really useful. Thank you.
It was a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for asking us.
Yeah.